Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little more intimate. No war horses charging across muddy fields, no kings screaming over scrolls, no flaming trebuchets hurling cows over castle walls. Nope. Tonight we're talking about dating, in the medieval world, and not just royal courtships or tragic ballads. We're diving straight into the awkward eye contact, the sweaty palms, and the "do you come to this market often?" kind of vibe. And spoiler alert, you're not going to survive. Not because of swords or plagues, but because you're about to experience a flirtation where eye contact might get you excommunicated. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking, barefoot down a dusty village path, the hem of your tunic brushing against your ankles. The air is thick with the scent of roasted barley and livestock. It's midsummer, and today is the feast of St. Ethelreda, which means only one thing, the annual village fair. You pass vendors shouting about turnips. Children chase chickens. Somewhere in the distance, a one-eyed lute player is belting out a tragic love ballad that rhymes heart with cart. You're not exactly dressed to impress. Your best cloak still smells faintly of fermented goat milk, but there's a certain buzz in the air. Today, the unmarried folk get to mingle, and in the 14th century, that's basically Tinder, but with more mud. Suddenly you see her or him or them. Doesn't matter, what matters is the look. A glance over the shoulder at the embroidery stall. A pause just long enough to make you question whether it was intentional. Your heart thuds, you glance away quickly. That's how it starts. In medieval times, one glance could mean everything. Courtship was a delicate art. Part performance, part endurance sport. You weren't allowed to say too much, you definitely weren't allowed to touch. And if you sneezed in the wrong direction, someone's uncle might accuse you of witchcraft. The rules were unwritten but deeply felt. For example, smiling too broadly. Suspicious, standing too close. Borderline scandalous, but standing too far. Rude. That's why people spent half their lives walking in slow circles around each other like confused swans. In the corner of the fair, two young men are juggling apples for attention. One accidentally hits an old nun. She mutters something about sinful fruit, and everyone pretends not to laugh. You keep walking, casually brushing against the edge of the wool tent, where your maybe crush is now pretending to examine yarn. You don't say anything, or else you wouldn't dare. Words come later, maybe. For now, you show interest through meaningful eye contact and by not actively fleeing. In fact, most medieval love stories begin not with grand declarations, but with someone loitering very politely near a pigsty. There's a moment where your hands nearly touch, both reaching for the same wooden hair comb. Your fingers almost graze. You both look up, you both panic, you both drop the comb. This is Foreplay 1327 edition. Of course, not everyone in this scene is single for love. Many are here because their families want to broker marriages, economic alliances disguised as romance. The baker's son is being nudged toward the miller's daughter, who looks deeply unimpressed. An old man in velvet robes whispers to a barmaid about fertile hips and gets slapped with a wooden ladle. Dating, clearly, is still a battlefield. There's also the matter of social status. You, being from a respectable but not noble background, know your place. Courting someone above your station could lead to gossip, fines, or worse, banishment from the parish dance. And trust me, that's where all the cool kids swap riddles. Some brave souls try poetry. You overhear a young squire muttering rhymes to a shepherd girl, something about how her eyes are bluer than boiled cabbage water. She giggles, not because it's good, but because it's trying. Meanwhile, you're offered a love charm from a traveling herbalist. It's a bundle of rosemary, lavender, and something that smells like regret. You decline, but she winks and mutters, "It worked on my third husband." You don't ask about the first two. By late afternoon, the energy shifts. Music grows. Slower. Dancers form circles. And somewhere in that quiet swirl of dust and twilight, you find yourself side by side with the person from earlier. Neither of you speaks. Instead, you pass each other a cup of watered-down cider. That's practically a proposal. You sip. They sip. The world spins a little. And just like that, you've entered a phase known as mutual interest, pending papal approval. You go home that night with sore feet, a sunburn, and a memory of someone's eyes watching yours beneath a canvas tent. You're not sure what happens next, but you'll be at the next fair. Maybe with cleaner hands, maybe not. And as you fall asleep under your straw-filled mattress, your mind returns to that nearly touch, that glance, that pause. That's medieval romance. Messy, muffled, but somehow unforgettable. You wake up to the sound of church bells, sharp, insistent, and vaguely judgmental. The kind of bells that don't just call you to worship, but also silently shame you for thinking about someone's ankles too much. This morning, things feel heavier. Not just because you slept on a straw bed that crunches like a bag of dry lettuce every time you roll over, but because you know something. Love in this village isn't just between two hearts. It's between you, your crush, your families, and the church. Yes, the church. If yesterday's fair was a little dance of possibilities, today is a slow realization that those possibilities come with footnotes. The church in medieval Europe had its hands deep in everything, including who could kiss whom and when and how and whether or not it had been sanctioned by an elderly monk named Gregor with a slight wine problem. See, dating, or courtship, as it was called, wasn't about finding the one. It was about aligning your soul with God's plan, as interpreted by local clergy who hadn't dated anyone in decades. You step out of your cottage, eyes squinting at the light, and you're immediately met with your neighbor's daughter, Eleanor. She's holding a parchment with the latest proclamation from the bishop's office. It reads like a user manual for romance written by someone who's never been in love. No hand-holding unless betrothed. No dancing if music contains string instruments. No prolonged eye contact exceeding 2 Ave Marias in duration. You're not even sure how long that is, but you're confident you've already broken that rule 5 times this week. The church wasn't just giving suggestions. They were the ultimate wingmen, or rather wing blockers. Want to get married? You needed banns read aloud in church for 3 consecutive Sundays, just in case anyone wanted to object because they heard, "Your great-granduncle once stole a turnip from the bride's family. Want to flirt at the marketplace? Better be subtle." You remember old brother Cedric giving a whole sermon about the dangers of playful glances near fruit stands, and if you were caught in a compromising position, say, a cheek kiss in the woods behind the chapel. There were penances for that. Public confession, long hours of prayer, or in one poor fellow's case, cleaning pigeon droppings off the church roof for a full Lent. You're reminded of the story of Thomas and Agnes, young lovers from a neighboring village. They were caught holding hands in the herb garden behind the apothecary. The priest declared it premature touching and sentenced them to spend a month walking 3 feet apart, connected only by a length of holy twine. Romantic? Maybe. Effective? Not at all. They tripped over it constantly, and Agnes eventually married a tanner instead. Even the calendar worked against you. Certain days, especially during Lent, Advent, and random feast days of obscure saints, were considered too holy for romantic acts. That's half the year gone. Imagine trying to plan a date and realizing, oh no, it's St. Wulfstan's kneecap day, again. But it wasn't just about control. The church genuinely believed it was protecting souls. They viewed romantic desire as a dangerous fire, useful in marriage, destructive outside it. It's a little like handing someone a candle and warning them not to breathe too hard. Still, people found ways to bend the rules. You overhear a conversation between two young women near the village well. One swears that if you confess your feelings inside the shadow of the bell tower, God hears it as a prayer, not a sin. The other nods solemnly and mentions her cousin, who once exchanged tokens of affection during Mass by hiding them in the offering basket. Even the clergy weren't always consistent. Brother Hugo, a monk known for his love of honey cakes and naps during Vespers, was spotted chatting a bit too long with the widow Matilda. People gossiped, of course, but when questioned, he simply replied, "I was offering spiritual guidance and a biscuit." The contradictions were everywhere. There were sermons preaching purity, and miracle plays in the town square full of bawdy jokes. There were strict rules, and loopholes the size of the village barn. And always the pressure to keep your feelings holy, or at least hidden behind a fig leaf of piety. As you walk back home, a thought crosses your mind. How did anyone fall in love under all these restrictions? Maybe that's what made it powerful, like trying to whisper in a room full of silence. Every glance, every word, every brush of fingers, it all meant something. You didn't take it for granted. You worked for it. Sure, maybe your love life was being audited by the saints. Maybe your idea of romance had to be filtered through scripture. But somehow, in all this regulation, feelings still bloomed. The heart, after all, was the one thing even the bishop couldn't completely govern. As night falls again and you wrap yourself in your scratchy wool blanket, your thoughts drift not to the rules, but to that person. Their face, the way they looked at you, even for a moment. You know, you'll see them again, and next time you'll find a holier way to flirt. Maybe with bread. Everyone loves bread. You wake to the low clatter of hooves on damp earth and the distant clink of metal buckets. Morning mist curls around the thatched rooftops like steam rising from a forgotten stew, and everything smells faintly of dew, smoke, and people. A lot of people, because here's a medieval truth that's rarely whispered in fairy tales. Nobody smelled good. You pull on your rough linen shirt, which still holds the scent of last week's onion soup, and step outside. The village is already stirring. A pig snorts behind a cart. Two women argue loudly over the quality of cabbage, and somewhere near the tannery, someone is boiling something that probably used to be alive. And yet, somehow, you're still thinking about them. That person from the fair, that spark, that glance. You're wondering how close could you really get to someone in an age without deodorant. See, the concept of romantic hygiene in the Middle Ages was, let's say, a little different. People bathed, but not every day, and definitely not in perfumed luxury. A good rinse in the stream once a week was considered enthusiastic. Bathhouses did exist, but many were eventually shut down by the church for being a little too steamy in every sense. That didn't mean folks didn't care about appearances. Quite the opposite. You catch a glimpse of your neighbor, Alice, dabbing rosewater behind her ears, a rare treat. Her brother, meanwhile, is rubbing his armpits with crushed sage. It's not Chanel No. 5, but in a world of mildew and manure, it might as well be. You, ever the romantic, consider your options. You've got some dried lavender tucked under your straw mattress. There's also a clay jar of a paste your aunt swears masks barnyard musk. It's made of goose fat and crushed mint. You apply it gingerly and pray. Walking toward the village. Green, you pass a group of young lads sharing grooming advice. One's got a tooth-stained stick made from ash and hazelnut. Another is combing lice from his hair with a fishbone and singing softly to distract himself. True love, after all, waits for no one, not even parasites. And then there's you, clutching a small vial of vinegar water, the medieval version of body spray. It stings your nostrils, but at least you feel romantic. even if you smell like a fermented salad. But the real test, the market. You spot them again standing near the fish stall, examining dried eels with polite horror. You approach, slowly, cautiously. This isn't the movies. This is medieval life, and you're both a little sweaty and vaguely embarrassed about it. Your conversation begins, as many do, with weather and goats. You mention that your neighbor's pig has started climbing onto roofs again. They laugh, a sound like bell chimes on a windy day. You're enchanted. Then, you get bold. You lean in a little and ask, "Is that rosemary I smell?" It's a risk, but it's true. There's a trace of herbs in the air, something faint and floral. They glance down, cheeks pink. "It's from my grandmother's salve," they reply. "She mixes it with sheep tallow. Says it wards off demons." You smile. "Effective. I haven't seen a single demon." You both laugh. It's happening again. That flutter. That moment where scent, sweat, and social anxiety swirl into something almost magical. Who needs moonlight and mandolins when you've got soap made from deer fat and pine resin? Of course, not everything is charming. As you chat, a wind shifts and brings with it the smell of the tanner's pit. You both try not to gag. "Ah," they say, "the perfume of industry." You nod, valiantly pretending your eyes aren't watering. Still, it doesn't matter, because under the grime and awkwardness, there's connection. There's real effort. And that's something. You remember the story of Lady Maren of Ashfield, a noble woman known for wearing crushed violet petals in her hair and rinsing her mouth with wine every morning. According to village gossip, she once attracted 3 suitors in 1 week and made them duel in a courtyard filled with lavender smoke. Romantic, yes. Practical, questionable. 2 ended up marrying each other. Meanwhile, down in the commons, your friend Edwin swears by eel oil as a love potion. He's currently trying to gift it to a girl who looks like she'd rather pet a rabid badger. You glance back at your companion. You've moved on from goats to music now, discussing whether the new traveling harpist is actually any good or just loud. As you speak, you realize something. They don't care about your smell. They care that you're present, that you're kind, that you didn't lead with nice oxen, and that, in the world of medieval love, is rare. As the sun begins to dip, casting the village in amber light, you part ways again. No touch, no promises. Just another look. This one a little longer. You walk home with a strange feeling in your chest and the faint scent of rosemary clinging to your sleeve. And as you tuck yourself in under your itchy blanket of questionable cleanliness, you remember, even in a world of fleas, mud, and questionable hygiene, romance still finds a way to bloom. Morning mist drifts lazily past your cottage window as you sit hunched over a slab of bark, dipping your quill into what may or may not be actual ink. It's hard to tell. Your cousin gave it to you and muttered something about squid residue and elderberry. Still, this is the most important thing you've written since that confession to stealing 2 extra oatcakes during Lent. Because today, you're writing a love letter, and no, you're not some cloaked noble tossing wax-sealed scrolls from balconies. You're just you, a person with a modest thatch roof, 3 goats to your name, and a rapidly smudging paragraph that currently reads, "Your eyes are like lanterns, no, not lanterns, apples, boiled apples." You sigh and try again. Love letters in the Middle Ages weren't just romantic. They were art, at least in theory. The nobles had entire manuals on how to write them. Phrases about pierced hearts, noble suffering, and lips like crimson chalices. You, meanwhile, are struggling not to compare someone's scent to cabbage water again. Still, this is how courtship worked when you couldn't just stroll over to someone's hut and say, "Hey, I like your freckles." Everything was veiled, hidden in metaphor, filtered through ink, ribbon, and prayer. You glance at your finished product. It says, "When I see you, my thoughts stumble like a drunken goose. My heart leaps like a frog near fire. I wish to walk beside you, through fields, through feasts, through life." Yours in hope and hopefully hygiene. Your name here. It's honest. Now comes the hard part. Delivery. You can't just hand it to them. Scandalous. Instead, you fold it carefully, tie it with twine, and ask a 10-year-old cousin to accidentally drop it near the church well while your crush is there. Bribery is involved. So is a small meat pie. As you wait, you remember how letters, especially romantic ones, used to be public events. Some noble families read them aloud during dinner. Some traveling minstrels even performed them, turning heartbreak into entertainment. If your letter was good, it might go viral, medieval style, spreading across town like a rumor about bad ale. There's even a tale of Lord Elric of Dunmore, who once hired an entire choir to sing his apology letter after he accidentally compared his beloved singing voice to a mourning goose. It didn't work, but it did get turned into a hit ballad called Honking for Her Grace. Meanwhile, back in your village, you spot your cousin sprinting toward you. No pie in sight, but cheeks red from either effort or guilt. It worked, they pant. They smiled. You feel your heart thump awkwardly in your chest like a blacksmith hammering inside a melon. Of course, not every letter ends in joy. Sometimes the parchment gets soaked in rain. Sometimes it's intercepted by an older sibling with an overdeveloped sense of dramatic reading. And sometimes the message is so flowery that the recipient has no idea who it's from. Like the tale of a farmhand who addressed his letter to she of the most delicate feet, only to have 3 different women think it was for them. Some monks even had to step in, offering translation services for overly cryptic poetry. Imagine walking into a monastery with a scroll that says, "My heart bleeds like roasted plum," and asking, "Is this romantic or a threat?" Back in the present, you spend the evening in a haze, wondering if they read the letter, wondering what they thought. Did they laugh? Did they reread it? Did they show it to their friends and make dramatic swooning noises for effect? You picture them holding the parchment, tracing your handwriting with a finger. The idea fills you with warmth and terror, but mostly warmth. Then, just as twilight begins to turn the sky into velvet, there's a soft knock at your door. You open it to find no one, just a small, neatly folded piece of cloth on your doorstep. You unfold it. Inside, tucked in a corner, is a note written in a careful, looping hand. "I too think frogs are noble. Meet me by the orchard fence tomorrow, if the weather's kind and the pigs aren't too loud." You don't smile. You beam. You feel like a troubadour with a tale to sing. Because in a world without texts, notifications, or heart emojis, a single note, smudged, silly, sincere, can carry the weight of an entire romance. You place it under your pillow, where dreams might find it and make it bloom. The next morning arrives with the dull clang of a cowbell and the unmistakable sound of someone yelling about a runaway goose. You barely hear it. Your mind is already racing ahead. Today is market day. And not just any market day. It's the day you agreed to meet them by the orchard fence under the soft rustle of pear leaves, provided the pigs behave. But first, you need a reason to be there. You can't just loiter like a lovesick fence post. No, you need to shop. You need a mission. You sling a worn basket over your shoulder and start your walk, trying not to look too eager, though you catch your reflection in a puddle and realize your tunic is on inside out. You fix it and mutter a prayer to Saint Embarrassier, patron saint of unfortunate timing. The village market is already alive by the time you arrive. Children dart between booths, merchants bark their offers, and the air smells like smoke, sweat, and apples that are a little too ambitious about their freshness. And in this chaos, this medieval shopping mall, courtship finds its stage, because, believe it or not, The marketplace wasn't just for trading goods. It was also where people flirted, negotiated, and sometimes got married. Right there between the cheese stall and the pig auction. You spot them near the dye merchant's stand, examining spools of deep blue thread. You approach slowly, pretending to be extremely interested in the concept of indigo. You say something like, "Color of the heavens, isn't it?" and immediately regret it. They glance up, smile. Only if heaven smells like fish oil and dyeweed. You both laugh. It's happening again, this dance of casual words and shared glances. And this time there's no cousin involved, no parchment to hide behind. Just two people pretending they care very deeply about thread count. And here's the thing. There were rules to this kind of flirting, even in the market. There was the accidental brush of hands, of course, but also things like the gift exchange, where giving someone an apple could mean admiration or indigestion, depending on the apple. Flowers had meanings too. A rosemary sprig whispered loyalty. A daisy said innocence. A leek, well, that. One usually meant, "I found this on the way here." You decide to buy them something small, thoughtful. You glance around, and your eyes land on a pair of beeswax candles molded into the shape of doves. Perfect. You offer them the candles without a word. They blink, surprised, and then nod, accepting with both hands like you've just handed them a small kingdom. "Thank you," they say, voice soft, though I think one of them has a cracked beak. "Then it's realistic," you reply. "No one's perfect." The laugh that follows isn't loud, but it's real. Nearby, another couple is arguing, loudly, over whether a dowry should include 3 chickens or 2.5, plus a goat foot. An old woman tries to sell you love onions, claiming they can bind souls. A wandering friar sings a very off-key ballad about betrayal and pudding. You and your companion weave through it all, shoulders occasionally touching. And you realize something strange. You feel safe here in the noise, in the smells, in the mess. It turns out a medieval market is the perfect metaphor for romance, crowded, chaotic, and full of unripe decisions, but thrilling all the same. Then they tell you something unexpected. "My mother thinks I should marry a flax merchant from the next village." You nearly drop your basket. You recover. "Does she get to pick?" They shake their heads slowly. "Not entirely, but she has opinions." "Of course she does. Everyone does. Love, in your time, isn't just about 2 people. It's about families, neighbors, livestock, land. It's about who can carry water, who owns a shovel, who sings too loudly at festivals. The idea of marrying for love is still new, still suspicious. Most people marry for survival, or status, or hay access, but then they look at you and really look. "I told her I was going to the market for candles," they say, holding up the doves. "I suppose I didn't lie," and for a second, the noise fades. Just you, them, and 2 slightly lopsided waxbirds. Eventually the moment ends. The pigs start squealing again, as they always do. The sun climbs higher, warming the packed dirt beneath your feet. And you know it's time to part, for now. "I'll see you at the festival," you ask. "If the moon approves," they answer. You smile, not entirely sure what that means, but liking the sound of it anyway. As you walk away, a young boy runs past you, yelling about pickled radishes. You feel light, anchored, some combination of both. Later at home, you light one of the candles, the one with the cracked beak. The flame flickers, small and determined, like you, like them, like love, somehow surviving the smell of fish, onions, and medieval matchmaking. You wake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, your breath ragged, not from a nightmare, not exactly, but from a memory. The black scarf tied to the chapel gate, the way the villagers whispered the word no one wanted to say. Pestilence. It crept in like a shadow with no feet. Quiet at first, a single cough, a slight fever. Then suddenly the church bells were tolling far too often, and the baker's son stopped coming to market. People started stuffing herbs into their tunics, burning rosemary bundles and avoiding eye contact as if glances could carry death. Now it's here, the plague, and love, sweet, stupid, fragrant love, suddenly feels like something both forbidden and essential. The next morning, the village is different, quieter. Still, but not in a peaceful way, more like the pause before thunder. You cover your face with a damp cloth soaked in vinegar, the local remedy, or at least the current superstition. Others wear sachets of lavender. A few bold souls smear themselves with crushed garlic and ash, hoping the stench will repel death itself. No one questions it. When everything falls apart, ritual becomes religion. And what about them? The person. Who made your heart feel like a bell swinging loose in a tower? You haven't seen them in 2 days. Panic creeps in like mold on damp bread. You hover near their usual spots, the dye merchant, the well, the church steps. But the spaces remain empty. Too empty. You catch the apothecary, eyes red from sleepless nights. Have you seen? You begin. She shakes her head. Not since Tuesday. Then she hesitates. But I heard they were still in the orchard. Self-quarantined. Orchard, of course. The place you first spoke, the place of doves and candles. You go. The walk feels longer than usual, each step weighed down by worry. You carry nothing. No letter, no gift. Only the unbearable hope that they're still breathing. At the edge of the orchard you see movement. A figure seated beneath a tree, hood drawn, a small fire crackling nearby. You call out their name, softly, and the head lifts. It's them. Pale, a bit thinner, but smiling, smiling, and that alone nearly knocks you off your feet. I brought cider, you lie. You didn't. But now it gives you a reason to sit. You settle across from them, maintaining the required 3 paces, a new rule born from fear and necessity. Even love has boundaries now. But still your eyes meet. That hasn't changed. They speak first. I didn't think anyone would come. You reply, I didn't think I could stay away. You both chuckle at the cliché, but it's the kind of laugh that folds inwards, small, sacred. They tell you they're not sick, just cautious. Their sister caught a fever, and so they came here to wait it out. Better safe than blamed, they add, a bitter smile tugging at the corners. You nod. Because blame spreads faster than disease, and if someone falls ill, people want someone to point at, even if it's the wrong someone. You sit there a while, sharing nothing and everything. You pass a bit of stale bread back and forth on a long stick. You hum a tune off-key. You speak of stars and saints, goats and ghosts. They ask, do you think love can survive this? You answer honestly, it has to. Because what else is there? Love and disease have always shared a strange relationship. One reveals who we are, the other tests who we pretend to be. You remember tales from old monks, how during the Great Plague of 1348, a couple in York married on their deathbeds, said their vows, kissed behind cloth, and passed within the week. The priest who performed the ceremony claimed it was the holiest thing he'd ever seen. Then there were others, secret trysts behind barns, where lovers risked everything for one last stolen touch. Not because they were foolish, but because they were human. Even now in your village, some couples sneak out to hold hands in the Yi. Graveyard. It sounds morbid, but where else is there room for privacy? The sun begins to set, casting golden threads through the trees. They stand up, brush off their cloak. Tomorrow, they say, if the wind doesn't change. You nod. Tomorrow. You don't embrace, you don't kiss, you don't even graze fingertips. But the way they look at you, fierce and fragile all at once, is worth 1,000 touchless days. As you walk back home, past shuttered doors and windows smeared with herbs, You understand something simple and terrible. Love is not immune, but it is persistent. And as long as it exists, as long as people risk themselves for one shared hour beneath a pear tree, then maybe, just maybe, there's still hope. You return to your hut, light the other dove-shaped candle and whisper a prayer, not to avoid death, but to remember love, even in pestilence, especially in pestilence. The next few days drift by like smoke over damp fields, slow, shifting, uncertain. The plague has quieted, or maybe people have just stopped counting. Life begins to stumble back into motion. Markets creak open, bells toll less often. And gossip never dies. You hear it first from the baker's apprentice, who always speaks a little too loud and a little too wrong. "Did you hear?" he says, elbow deep in dough. The miller's daughter's gone and courted a knight, full armor, rusty soul, probably smells like boiled iron and old regrets. Someone nearby gasps, someone else snorts. But you just stop, because your heart's already leaping to a dangerous place. You know the look. You've seen the glance, you've felt the warmth, but it's not toward you. It's toward someone above you, not in spirit, not in kindness, just in station. They're being courted by a noble. You knew this moment might come. You just didn't think it would come with banners and trumpets and a horse that probably has a better diet than you. You see them that afternoon, not alone, but riding behind someone tall, armored and dazzling in a way that feels entirely wrong. They don't wave, they don't even glance, but they see you. And you know they know you're there. Your stomach twists. Not with betrayal, not even jealousy. Just the slow sinking weight of a world that doesn't care how you feel, only who you are. Or more accurately, who your father's goats belonged to, because in your world, love can bloom anywhere, but marriage has borders. It's not about emotions, it's about assets. Families don't just trade livestock, they trade bloodlines. And no matter how warm your late-night orchard talks, where you don't own land, you don't own a title. All you own is a good heart and 2 half-burned dove candles, which, historically speaking, has not impressed many mothers-in-law. You try to tell yourself it's fine. This happens. You had no claim. You had no vow. Just a series of shared glances and garden metaphors. But it hurts anyway. You remember the tale of Wilfrid the swineherd, a local legend. He once fell in love with Lady Thalia of Briarstone, a noblewoman who wore velvet like it was air. They met during a flood when he saved her from drowning with a barrel lid and a rope made of old sausages. For weeks afterward, they exchanged love poems written on dried leaves. Then she was married off to a merchant who owned 3 ships and exactly 0 sausages. Wilfrid wept for months, but later became a monk and then, somehow, a bishop. Because heartbreak either breaks you or turns you into someone unrecognizable. You're not aiming to be a bishop. But you are struggling not to walk in slow circles near the chapel, muttering poetry into your sleeve. Then, one morning, you find a ribbon on your doorstep, a very specific ribbon. Blue, soft, threaded with 2 uneven stitches you remember pointing out weeks ago, tied around it, a sprig of rosemary. And suddenly, your breath returns. Because in the Middle Ages, a gift of rosemary wasn't just decoration. It was a symbol of remembrance, of loyalty, of saying, I still think of you. Even when I'm not allowed to say so, you don't see them that day, or the next. But the ribbon sits in your pocket, a gentle weight you touch when no one's watching. Eventually, you do cross paths near the chapel garden in the late afternoon light. They don't speak at first. Neither do you. Finally, they whisper, he's not cruel, you nod. He's also not you. That nearly knocks the breath out of you. They go on. My family, they want security, titles, ties. I don't blame them. I don't even blame him. But you finish the sentence for them. But you wanted something else first. They don't cry. Neither do you. But the silence that follows is the kind that could have been 1,000 words long. In medieval times, love and class were oil and water. You could stir them, you could swirl them, but they rarely held together. A peasant marrying a noble wasn't just rare, it was dangerous. It threatened lines, wealth, control. Even the church had limits. Unequal yoke, they called it. A mismatched pairing, like pairing a donkey and an ox to pull a plow. They'd wobble, they'd stumble, they'd fail. But what if they just walked slower? You part ways again, no promises. Just a glance over the shoulder that says, this isn't over, and maybe it isn't. Because love, real love, doesn't always end at the altar. Sometimes it lives in the spaces between duty and longing. Sometimes it grows in secret gardens and borrowed moments. And sometimes it lives in a ribbon tied with rosemary. You walk home with your head full of questions and your heart full of what-ifs. You light both dove candles this time. Let them burn. Let the wax pool together. Whatever happens next, you'll remember this. You loved and it mattered, even if the world said it didn't. It's barely dawn when you're shaken awake. Not by plague or bells or even that cursed rooster that hates your sleep schedule, but by your own mother's voice. Sharp, eager, that tone she only gets when she's made a decision on your behalf. They're coming this morning, she says, tightening her shawl. I'd best look clean and try not to talk too much, just nod a lot. You blink at her. Who's coming? The Thatcher family, she says, with their son and a jug of cider. They want to talk. Your heart drops so fast it makes a noise. Because in medieval terms, a family visit with cider meant only one thing, an offer. And not the romantic kind. Not poetry. Not stolen glances or blue ribbons. This was business. An arrangement. A contract with apples. You sit in stunned silence as your mother lists the virtues of this Thatcher boy, like a market vendor trying to offload particularly muscular radishes. Hard-working, owns a fine mule. His sister weaves with speed. You barely hear her. Your thoughts have already drifted to the orchard, to the cracked beak candle, to the look in their eyes when they said, he's also not. You. But in your world, parents wield power like royalty, and matchmaking is as much an art as roofing. Marriages are not chosen, they are brokered, negotiated with sheep, sealed with cider, and approved by every aunt within shouting distance. Still, you try. I don't want this, you say, voice steadier than you feel. Your mother stiffens. It's a good match. I don't care if it's a good match. Then you're a fool. The room goes cold, not from weather, but from the weight of expectation slamming into love like a cartload of bricks. You excuse yourself before the Thatchers arrive. Outdoors, the sky is soft with morning fog. You walk fast, feet crunching through frost. Your hands are shaking, and not from cold, but from everything pressing down. You pass the dye merchant's stand, the corner where you first locked eyes, the chapel where you both pretended not to know. What was happening? You arrive at their home, unsure what you'll say, but they're not there. Their sister answers, looking surprised but not unkind. They left early, rode toward the forest road, said they needed air. Forest road, that winding path of moss and shadow, the place people go when they need to disappear or breathe. You turn and follow, because you've made up your mind. You might not own a title, or land, or even clean socks. But you have your choice. The forest is quiet this early. Birdsong barely begun, light filtering through wet leaves like breath through a veil. And then you see them, seated on a fallen log, hood down, a stick in their hands, tracing circles in the dirt. They hear you but don't turn. Just say softly, I thought you'd be drinking cider by now. You snort. I thought you'd be married to a man who wears armor indoors. They smile faintly. I said no. You pause. You what? I said no, they repeat. To the night, to my family, to all of it. You sit beside them, careful, quiet. They continue, voice low. I told them I didn't want land or horses. I wanted someone who listens, who laughs when I say dumb things about frogs and firewood. Someone who doesn't make me feel like a transaction. You stare at the ground. I said no too, or I'm going to. They look at you now, really look, and something passes between you. Not electricity, not fire, something softer, deeper. Choice. In medieval Europe, choice was rare, especially in matters of the heart, but not impossible. Some lovers did defy their parents, some ran away. Some negotiated better futures with sheer stubbornness and a lot of goat milk. It wasn't easy, but it happened. You both sit in the hush of the woods, the kind of silence that makes space for decisions. Then they speak again. What now? You don't know. Not really, but you say we walk, we talk, we figure it out together. It's not a vow, not yet, but it's something. You rise, they rise, and together you walk deeper into the trees. Not to flee, but to find a way forward that is yours. Later that evening you return home. The Thatchers are gone. Your mother is quiet. She doesn't ask. You don't explain. But there's a look in her eyes. Frustration, yes, but also respect, or perhaps recognition, because she too was once young, once in love, once forced to smile at someone because it was a good match. She leaves a small plate of bread by your door and says nothing. You sit alone that night, but not lonely. You've made your stand, and somehow that feels cleaner than any marriage contract, because love, real love, isn't handed to you like a dowry. It's built, with words, with choices, with mornings in the woods when everything else is breaking. You light a third candle, newly made, and place it beside the two doves. The wax melts slowly, pooling into one golden river. Whatever comes next, you'll walk it with them. Together, not bought, not traded. Chosen. The festival arrives with the usual fanfare. Flower garlands wilting under the sun, lutes that haven't been tuned since last harvest, and chickens wandering places no chicken should logically be. It's a riot of smells, roasted meat, spilled, cider, damp wool, and over it all floats the sound of laughter and a drumbeat that's maybe celebratory, maybe just confused. You're not just attending this year, you're walking in with someone, not officially, not with hand-fasting chords or church bells, but side by side, matching steps, no space between, which in medieval terms is about as public as love gets, without drawing disapproving coughs from the parish matron. You've even dressed for the occasion. Your best tunic, the one without the beet stain, and your leather shoes, which squeak like frightened mice, but at least they match. Beside you, they wear a simple blue sash tied at the waist, the same color as that ribbon from weeks ago. You don't mention it. You don't need to. As you cross into the village square, heads turn. Not many, but enough. A few old folks whisper. One lad elbows another. You hear a muttered, "They're not even engaged," followed by a louder "yet." You're not rattled, mostly. Just a little damp under the arms, but still you feel strong. Because for the first time this isn't secret. This is a declaration, and that's when you hear it. The clang of metal, the shimmer of light on steel, and a man's voice, loud and far too confident. "Ah, there you are, the knight, of course." He stands near the apple cart, helm under one arm, hair suspiciously windswept for someone not currently riding a horse. Around him are gathered a small crowd of admirers, mostly children, all dazzled by the armor. You're just dazzled by how loud his belt buckle is. Your companion stiffens. You feel it before they even speak. "I didn't know he'd be here," they murmur. You believe them, you nod, you stay. The knight approaches. He doesn't greet you, just turns to them. "You left before I could offer a proper farewell," he says. His tone is soft, but his eyes scan you with polite confusion. like someone trying to figure out why the soup tastes like onions when they asked for leek. I said no, they reply. The knight chuckles, and I respected that. But a lady or gentleman should be given the chance to reconsider, especially with time. His glance at you is pointed, not cruel. Just dismissive, like your furniture he hasn't learned to respect yet. You step forward, not aggressive, just present. They made their choice. The knight raises an eyebrow. You speak for them now? You open your mouth. But before, you can say something you'll probably regret. Your companion does it for you. I speak for myself, they say, firm. And I say we're done. Silence. Then the knight shrugs, gives a short bow, and turns back to his fan club. It's over. Not dramatic, not even noisy, but final, and you realize as you watch your companion exhale, shoulders softening, that this was more than just a moment. This was a test. One neither of you asked for, but both of you passed. You celebrate by buying 2 honey cakes and sitting by the edge of the dancing circle, feet brushing beneath the bench like ivy vines trying to hold hands. Then someone calls out your names. They've added your pair to the games. Now to clarify, medieval courtship games were somewhere between flirting and full contact sport. They involved things like sack races, blindfolded cheese tosses, and the ever-popular walk the beam with a bucket. It was equal parts ridiculous and revealing, because nothing says compatibility like almost falling into a trough together. You don't decline. Instead, you climb onto the balance beam, a narrow strip of wood suspended above a shallow mud pit, with a bucket in one hand and your dignity in the other. Your companion climbs onto the other side. The goal: walk toward the middle, exchange the bucket, walk back without falling in. Easy, until the crowd starts cheering, until someone yells, "Don't drop your betrothal," and someone else throws a flower crown right into your face. You wobble. They wobble, you almost drop the bucket, but somehow, miraculously, you meet in the middle. Exchange the bucket. Lock eyes. You're supposed to turn around now, but you don't. You stay right there, teetering face to face while the crowd roars for movement. And in that moment, as the world wobbles beneath your feet, you know you've found balance. Then the board creaks. You both fall. Right into the mud. Everyone laughs. So do you, so do they. You come up dripping, grinning, and victorious. Because romance isn't clean. It's not pristine. It's messy, ridiculous, and sometimes soaked in pig-scented water, and it's yours. As the sun sets over the square, fires are lit, songs are sung, and you dance. Not beautifully, not gracefully, but together. And that's what matters. You spin, you laugh, you slip on someone's spilled stew and nearly take out a bard. You survive. And as night wraps around the village like a warm, itchy blanket, you lean against each other under a sky full of stars, thinking, we did this. Not by luck, by choice, by presence, by mud, missteps, and mutual stubbornness. You fall asleep that night on a pile of hay, still half laughing, still half drenched, and fully certain that no armor-clad noble could ever offer something more valuable than this, a real connection, cracked, wobbly, but true. The rooster crows too early, as always, but today you're already awake, because last night, after the dancing and the falling and the cider and the singing that got very off-key around the third verse, you heard something whispered into your ear, "I have a plan." And that's how, at the crack of dawn, you find yourself crouching behind a haystack, hiding from your own uncle, while your companion holds a basket of stolen bread and grins like someone about to commit light mischief. "In the name of love," you whisper. "You said plan, not felony," they shrug. "Technically, it's both." Because today, and for reasons that have everything and nothing to do with affection, you're helping with what's known around the village as a tronquoy, a wedding dodge, a ceremonial, "Oops, I vanished." See, in medieval Europe, not all marriages were agreed upon. Some were arranged with gold and goats and pressure, some were announced without warning, and some, like the one your companion was nearly dragged into again by their very persistent aunt, were forced through faster than a cart downhill. But in cases where the bride, or groom, wasn't fully on board. There was a trick, a tradition, a loophole older than parchment, the abduction. Now, to be clear, it wasn't a real kidnapping, not always. Sometimes it was a staged escape, a mutual agreement where two people disappeared, temporarily, to send a message. No, thank you. We choose differently. Your job? Help them vanish for the afternoon, just long enough to ruin the wedding contract. The trick was time. If the marriage ceremony didn't happen on the chosen date, it had to be rescheduled. And sometimes, in that space, reason returned. Or parents changed their minds. Or someone married the baker's cousin instead, so here you are. Playing lookout behind the granary while they sneak through the village, wearing a cloak 3 sizes too big, and carrying a chicken, because it seemed like the kind of thing someone on the run would carry. You wave them forward. They dart across the lane. An old man watering turnips sees them and raises an eyebrow. You cough loudly and start reciting a hymn. He nods, satisfied. You meet up behind the chapel wall. They're breathless, flushed, exhilarated. This is ridiculous. It is. We could get fined. We could. We could also get married under a waterfall in the woods and never tell anyone. I'm listening. You both laugh, then fall quiet. The chapel bells begin to ring. Somewhere nearby, the bridegroom waits. So does the priest. So does the aunt. But no bride, because the bride is here, with you, holding a chicken, planning her future. This isn't just rebellion. It's agency, a rare and radical thing in your time. The rest of the day is spent wandering the edge of the woods, talking about everything and nothing. You share childhood memories. Who fell into what? Who once kissed a toad on a dare? You talk about if you had land, if you had coin, if you had a cart with a working wheel. You watch them pluck wildflowers and stick them into their hair. You ask if they'd ever actually marry in secret. They reply, maybe, if the secret wasn't the shame. And something in you breaks open, soft, warm, certain. You stop beside a stream. The water is low, slow, full of frogs and silver ripples. They reach into their pocket and pull out a ribbon. Not the blue one, a new one. Green, soft, with a knot in the center. They say, in some villages this means promise. You don't speak. Just reach into your own pocket and pull out a loop of thread from your tunic. Frayed, faded, but yours. You tie the two together. It's not a wedding. Not a vow. Not legally binding under church or crown. But it's yours. Even in a time where women were property, where marriage was economy, where choices were borrowed or stolen, two people could still look at each other and say, not this. Wait, not like this. Back in the village, chaos reigns, aunt's furious, groom is embarrassed. The priest is pretending he had no idea and was absolutely not charging double for expedited services. You return by sunset, hands muddy, hearts light. No one says anything, not yet, but the message is clear. They won't try again. Not right. Away you've delayed the inevitable, or maybe rewritten it because now they know you're not passive. You're not waiting, you're choosing. And even if the world tries again to separate you, with rules, rituals, or rotten expectations, you've already done the most dangerous thing two people can do in the Middle Ages. Declare yourselves as. Night falls, you sit beneath the stars, shoulders brushing, the sound of crickets loud and insistent. The chicken inexplicably is still with you, now asleep. You whisper, tomorrow? They reply, every day after that. And somehow, despite everything, war, plague, poverty, mud, and chickens, you fall asleep smiling because you ran, and you were caught, not by obligation, but by love. It starts with a whisper near the well. Two women fetching water, one leans in, the other gasps. They both glance your way, too quickly. Then look away. Too late. By midday, it's everywhere. You kissed someone you shouldn't have. You said something you didn't. You promised marriage and now you're denying it. You bewitched them. You unbewitched them. You're pregnant with twins and also possibly a heretic. None of it is true, except maybe the kiss, but even that was behind a stable and under the cover of at least one hay bale and a song about St. Hedwig's lost shoe. Hardly scandalous, but the truth doesn't matter in your village, not really. What matters is how fast a story travels and how juicy it tastes when passed from mouth to mouth like a ripe forbidden plum. You try to ignore it at first, but then your companion stops showing up. No orchard walks, no secret notes, no ribbon messages. You ask around. Their brother avoids your gaze. Their sister gives you a tight smile and says, "It's complicated." You feel like the ground's gone soft beneath your feet, like you're walking across a field of rumors, each one waiting to swallow you whole, because in the medieval world reputation is currency and yours is in free fall. It started with the baker's wife. She heard you were spotted leaving the woods with someone else, in a state of breathlessness. She told the cooper, who told the tailor, who somehow added goats to the story. By the time it reached the priest, you'd apparently eloped, returned, and cursed someone's crops. You remember something your aunt once said? Words are like fleas, and once they jump, you never get them all back. And here they are, jumping, biting. You try to speak with your companion's family, but they've gone icy. Polite, yes, but distant in the way people get when they're trying not to invite scandal in for tea. The priest delivers a homily about the danger of unchecked affection. His eyes don't meet yours, but they don't need to. You pass two girls in the lane. One coughs and says, "Watch out, or you'll catch love fever." They giggle. You're angry, hurt, but most of all, confused. Because what did you do wrong, love, after all, was the one honest thing. You didn't bribe, you didn't scheme. You didn't court 5 people at once and write them all the same goat poem. You just felt something and followed it. You remember reading, or being told, about Marjorie of Fenbrook. She was once promised to a squire, fell in love with a travelling glassblower instead, and had the nerve to choose him. The village turned, called her unnatural, said her heart was too wild. They burned her love letters and told her laughter sounded unsettled. She married the glassblower anyway, moved 2 towns over. Her husband built her a window with colored panes that shimmered in the sunlight. People said her house glowed like it was blessed, but she never came back. That part always stuck with you, because even when the love wins, the story doesn't always end in applause. Sometimes it ends in exile. Finally, after nearly a week of silence, you see your companion, at a distance in the marketplace. You move to approach, they turn and walk the other way, your stomach flips. You follow, carefully, not running, just being there like you always were. You catch up behind the grain stand, they speak first. "You shouldn't be here." "I live here," you reply. They sigh. "You know what I mean." Their voice is tight, not angry, guarded, like someone who's been told one version of you too many times. "I didn't say those things," you begin. "I didn't do any of what they're saying." "I know." "Then why?" "Because knowing doesn't change how people feel." They shake their head. "My family's on edge. The priest has been watching. My cousin said if we keep seeing each other, people will start accusing me of being bewitched." You laugh, bitterly. That's one of the nicer theories. They don't laugh. There's silence again. Then they reach into their pocket and hand you something, a piece of folded cloth. Inside, your thread loop. And their green ribbon still knotted to it. You feel your throat tighten. "I'm not giving it back," they say quickly. "I just can't wear it right now." You nod, and you understand. You really do, because this isn't about love. It's about pressure, about proximity, about living in a world where feelings aren't private but public property. You part ways again, no anger, just wait. But that night, you do something small, something quiet. You sit by the well, the place the first rumor began, and you speak aloud, to no one, to everyone. You say, I love someone, they loved me. We walked in the orchard, we laughed, we made each other feel like more. That's it. And a strange thing happens. Someone walking past nods. Doesn't say a word, just nods. Maybe they know. Maybe they remember their own orchard. Because love doesn't die from gossip. It doesn't even bruise. Not really. It withdraws. It waits. It finds another time, another place, and it remembers. You go to sleep that night, the thread and ribbon bundle beside your pillow. Not a breakup. Just a pause. And in a world so loud with judgment, sometimes silence is the most faithful. Sound of all. You haven't spoken in 3 days, not because of anger, not because you've stopped loving, but because sometimes in the tight weave of a small medieval village, silence is the only way to protect what's tender. You've kept busy, mended boots, fed chickens, helped that old widow who always smells like pickled turnips clean her soot-covered hearth. Anything to keep your hands moving and your heart still. Then, one late afternoon, just as the light begins to slant gold across the cobblestones, you get a note, folded neatly, delivered by a little boy with wild hair and no sense of personal space. He thrusts it into your hand and runs off before you can ask questions. The note smells faintly of lavender and firewood. Tonight, by the path of moonstones, bring nothing but honesty. That's how you find yourself hours later, wrapped in your warmest cloak, walking past the chapel, past the orchard, and into the fields where the moon hits certain stones just right, casting a pale glow like spilled milk across the earth. And there they are, waiting beneath a tree, face half lit, eyes dark with something not quite sadness, not quite joy. I had to see you, they say. You don't reply, you just sit beside them. I've missed you, they add. I never left, you finally whisper. They smile, a small, slow curve of the lips that makes your chest ache in that familiar, infuriating, wonderful way. You talk for a long time, not about the village, not about the rumors or the families or the priest who keeps mentioning moral decay during sermons while eyeing you from the pulpit. No. You talk about the sky, about the stars, about how the wind smells different this week, sharper, like something's changing. You talk about what life might be like somewhere else, and then just when your shoulders begin to lean in, when your words soften into breath, a twig snaps behind you, you both freeze, and that's when you remember. You're not alone, because medieval love stories, for all their stolen glances and whispered vows, often came with chaperones or watchers. People whose job, and unofficial or otherwise, was to make sure affection didn't turn into something scandalous. And in your case, that person is Grandmother Margot, your companion's grandmother specifically, a legend in the village. Wears black wool in summer, has the glare of a hawk and the hearing of a fox, claims she once scolded a ghost into leaving her kitchen. She steps out of the brush like some ancient forest deity wrapped in a shawl. I thought I smelled secrets, she says flatly. You and your companion leap apart like guilty squirrels. I told your father I'd keep an eye, she continues, narrowing her gaze. So here I am, eyeing. You begin to stammer some defense, but she waves it off. Oh, hush. I'm not here to ruin your little moment. I'm just here to remind you. What happens when little moments turn into little consequences? Your companion groans softly. Grandmother, I'm not here to stop you, she adds, eyeing you both. I just want to witness it. And somehow that's worse. She sits herself on a flat stone, takes out some knitting. Where was she keeping that? And begins crafting what looks like the angriest scarf in history. You and your beloved exchange a look. There's no point fighting this, so you resume talking, whispering, laughing. The way two people do when they've accepted that privacy is not a luxury afforded to young lovers in woolen villages with over-involved elders. You learn to talk around the watcher, to say things with glances, to make the silence stretch and At one point your companion reaches over, very slowly, and touches your hand just briefly. Just lightly, it's not much. But it's everything, because in a world of curfews and watchful eyes, even that brush of skin can carry the weight of a vow. You don't speak it, but you both feel it, and oddly enough, even Grandmother Margot seems to approve. She mutters, "About time," then knits faster. Later, as the moon climbs higher and the air grows cold, you rise to leave. Grandmother shuffles off first, muttering about children and their endless moon-gazing. You both watch her go, part sentinel, part guardian, part reluctant Cupid. As soon as she's out of earshot, you both laugh, loudly, freely. It feels so good to laugh again, and then they look at you and really look. "I don't care who's watching anymore," they say, "neither do I." And it's true, because you've survived plague, class, rumor, jealousy, and now chaperones. You've adapted, grown, become skilled at navigating a love that was never given permission to bloom, but here it is, blooming anyway, under moonlight, in full view of anyone brave enough to look. You walk home together slowly, fingers almost but not quite touching, because part of you still remembers the rules. But another part, the louder part, doesn't care. And you know deep down that the next time your fingers meet, you won't let go. Let the whole village watch, let them gossip, let them knit scarves of suspicion. You'll be too busy loving to notice. It started with a question, a simple one, so, which saint does your family pray to most? You were lying in a hayloft side by side, watching the dust float like lazy fireflies in the golden afternoon light. Your companion's voice had been soft, curious, but tinged with something else, a kind of caution that didn't match the ease of the moment. You answered without thinking. St. Dunstan, I suppose. And maybe a little bit of the Virgin. Depends on who's cooking that. They were quiet for a beat. Then, "We don't really pray to her." You blinked. "You don't?" A shake of the head. "My family's from the border region. We follow a different rite. Same God, different rhythms." And just like that, the warmth in your chest shifted. Not vanished, not broken, but questioned. Because in medieval times, faith wasn't just faith. It was community, identity, law. It told you where you belonged, who you could marry, what songs you sang at funerals, and even how you said amen. Different beliefs, even within Christianity, could raise eyebrows, spark debate, divide towns and lovers. You didn't say anything that afternoon. But it stuck with you, the quiet knowledge that despite everything you'd been through, there was a new divide neither of you had seen coming. A few days later, it came up again. This time, not in whispers. It was during a village procession. A holy day, a St. Bartholomew's maybe. There were candles, hymns, baskets of herbs. You stood in line to sprinkle holy water, and your companion hesitated. Not rudely, just briefly. A woman behind you noticed. "Strange," she muttered, loud enough to carry. "Most of us know when to cross ourselves." The words hit like a stone, wrapped in silk. After that, things moved quickly. People began to notice. Your companion's family said grace differently. They fasted on different days. They quoted different saints, and while none of it was heretical, it was unfamiliar, and unfamiliar meant dangerous. The priest gave a sermon about unity in belief. A subtle jab, maybe not even intended for you. But when he locked eyes, with your companion mid-sermon, the message landed. You tried to reason with people. "It's the same God," you said. "They just light candles on Thursdays instead of Wednesdays." But logic rarely wins over suspicion. "Today it's candles," someone replied. "Tomorrow it's heresy." Your mother sat you down. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were stormy. "This is not just about you," she said. "This is about the souls of our future children." You stared at her. "We don't even have goats yet." She didn't laugh. Later at the market, someone had scratched the word divided into the back of your companion's bench. Crude, small, but it was there. You both started meeting less in public. Not because you were ashamed, but because love under pressure becomes cautious. And yet, somehow those quiet meetings meant more. You brought them a book of prayers once, worn, handwritten, passed down from your grandmother. Inside were tiny notes in the margins, reminders about when to kneel. A recipe for goose stew scribbled. Next to Psalm 42, a sketch of a dog. They held it like it was fragile. Holy. I don't believe everything in here, they said. I know, you said. But I believe in you. Later they gave you a candle, one from their own altar, scented with cloves, wrapped in green twine, a token not of conversion, but connection. You remember the old tale of Isolde and Marion, two women from rival towns who exchanged herbs through the forest for years. One followed the abbey calendar, the other the moon. They never agreed on doctrine, but their love letters became legend. Eventually their graves were placed side by side, joined by ivy that no one dared trim. God, your companion whispered one night, must understand that. And you believed it. Still the strain grew. You began to ask dangerous questions, not about them, but about yourself. Could you marry someone who didn't share every ritual? Could you raise children in a house with 2 calendars, 2 feasts, 2 sets of saints? Would people come to your wedding? Would the priest even allow it? One night, sitting under a fig tree, you finally asked, "Do you ever think we're making this harder than it has to be?" They were quiet, so quiet. You heard the wind pluck leaves from the branches. Then they said, "Every day, and I'd still choose it." You looked at them, really looked. "I don't want to spend my life arguing over who gets to bless the bread." They took your hand. "Then let's agree. We bless it together." It wasn't a solution, not exactly. But it was something stronger, a vow to hold, difference without letting it divide. And maybe that's what love was in your world. Not a perfect match of practices, but a shared willingness to stay at the table, to pass bread, even if you whispered different prayers over it. As the moon rose that night, you lit both candles, yours and theirs, side by side, and watched the flames flicker differently, but together. The wedding was scheduled for 3 days after the barley harvest, and the entire village was invited, whether they wanted to be or not. It wasn't your wedding, not yet. It was your cousin's, a boisterous, loud-voiced lad named Gerard, who once tried to impress a girl by wrestling a goat. He lost, but apparently not all his romantic efforts failed, because today he's about to become a husband. You and your companion attend together, openly, for the first time since the whispers died down. People still stare, of course, some with curiosity, some with suspicion, but most just nod, as if they finally accepted that, like moldy cheese and bad harp players, you're here to stay. The square has been transformed. Bunting hangs from every window. Tables groan under the weight of meats, pies, and unidentifiable stew. Children chase geese. A local bard warms up with a song that rhymes matrimony with pepperoni, which might be a theological error. But none of that matters, because for the first time in a long time you feel safe, seen, together. You sit near the edge of the celebration, watching the ceremonial procession unfold. The bride, dressed in layers of linen and lace, is carried toward the chapel on a small cart decorated with rosemary, daisies, and, inexplicably, cabbages. You ask why, your companion shrugs. Fertility, or someone misunderstood the recipe. The priest stands ready, holding a book so old the spine is tied together with ribbon. He clears his throat dramatically, like a rooster with something to prove, and the crowd hushes. And then it begins. A medieval wedding isn't like the ones in songs. There are no strings of violins, no swan-shaped cakes, no floating lanterns, or orchestras under moonlight. Instead, there are feet stomping in dirt, elders crying loudly whether they want to or not, children attempting to balance grapes on their noses during the vows, and yet, it's beautiful. The couple speaks their promises not in verse, but in the plain, sturdy language of people who've spent their lives digging, hauling, surviving. There's power in that. In realness, I'll keep the fire lit. I'll share the good flour. I'll never curse your mother unless she really deserves it. You laugh quietly, and your companion squeezes your hand. Because somewhere, in this mud and madness, you see yourselves. You're not there yet. No chapel booking, no dowry arranged, no priest with a blessed book and a cabbage centerpiece, but you're getting close. After the ceremony, the feast begins. The air fills with smoke, spice and song. You're handed a plate piled high with meat and bread, and you don't even ask what animal it came from. That's a question for after, then comes the dancing. You try to decline at first, citing sore feet, social anxiety, and a deeply held fear of public clapping. But your companion pulls you in, and so you dance badly, joyfully, like someone who forgot they had joints. You spin, stumble, and collide with at least 2 uncles, 1 dog, and a tray of pickled onions. You laugh until your sides hurt. You laugh until someone hands you more cider and you spill half of it onto your boots. And somewhere in the chaos, under lanterns made from oiled paper and hope, your companion leans in and whispers, "When it's our turn, I want it like this." You look around, at the laughter, at the mess, at the imperfect, beautiful swarm of it all, and you say, "Exactly like this. Just maybe fewer onions." That night, after the dancing ends and the fires turn to embers, you two stay behind, just sitting on a bench watching stars. Your companion's head rests on your shoulder. Someone snores nearby. A lute string breaks in the distance. You don't speak for a while, then they say, "What if they say no?" You blink. Who? The priest, the bishop, the law, your mother, everyone. You pause, then you reach into your pocket and pull out a small sprig of rosemary. Saved from the bride's cart, you hand it to them. Then we say yes, and that's enough. You don't know how it will happen, or when. You still don't have land, or a license, or even a proper pair of matching mugs, but you have this, a promise, not one forged in front of an altar, but one carved in the soft hours between dances and stars. A few weeks later, word spreads that the bans have been posted. 3 Sundays in a row, your names will be read aloud in church. A warning, a preparation, a permission. And if no one objects, if the sky stays clear and the pigs behave, then you'll be allowed to marry. No more secrets, no more hiding, just love. Loud, silly, ordinary love. You light a candle that night, not a dove one. Just plain wax dripped into a chipped doll. You watch the flame flicker and whisper, "We're almost there." You wake to church bells, not the warning kind, not the morning kind, not the "we discovered someone stealing eggs again" kind. No, this is the wedding bell. Your wedding bell. You lie still for a moment, just listening, letting it sink in. Today you won't be flirting at a distance. You won't be dodging rumors. You won't be clutching a ribbon like it's the only proof of something real. Today you walk into the chapel, not as someone hoping, or hiding, or holding back, but as someone ready. Your mother is already up, bustling about the kitchen with a focused energy that says, "I've made peace with this, but don't you dare forget your cousin still married a man with land." She's nervous but proud. She straightens your collar 6 times, tries not to cry, fails on the 7th time. Outside, the village is stirring, candles being lit, flowers tied to gates. Someone is chasing a runaway goose, not symbolic, just unfortunate. The air smells like rosemary, cinnamon, and wood smoke. Your best tunic is pressed, your shoes are only slightly muddy, your hands are shaking, but your heart, steady. You reach the chapel as the sun crests over the trees. It casts a soft golden light through the stained glass windows, which, to be honest, depict some very confusing biblical scenes. You pass under an arch of woven branches, where two village boys throw flower petals in your face far too enthusiastically. And then, there they are, waiting at the altar, dressed not in silk or gold or anything extravagant, but in the clothes that have always suited them, simple, real, quietly beautiful. There's a sprig of rosemary tucked into their sleeve, the green ribbon around their wrist. You meet their eyes. And suddenly there's no one else in the room. Not the priest fumbling through his notes, not your uncle who's already crying, not the chickens someone inexplicably brought indoors, just them, you, and the space between you shrinking. The priest begins the ceremony with a long unnecessary anecdote about Saint Agnes and her 6 goats. You both listen patiently. The crowd does not. A child sneezes directly into someone's bonnet. A lute string snaps again. All of it is perfect, because this isn't about perfection, it's about arrival. When the time comes for vows, you don't need parchment, you don't need poetry. You already know the words. I promise to walk beside you, through frost and feast, through rumors, weddings and mud, through slow mornings and fast geese. I choose you, not for a season or a safe choice, but for every ordinary day that follows. They echo you with trembling joy. I promise to laugh when you fall in, the stream, to pull you back when your courage slips, to light a candle when you forget what light looks like. I choose you, not because I must, but because I can. The priest nods. The crowd sniffles, and then the kiss. It's not the kind that's written in songs or painted on chapel ceilings. It's simple, gentle, a bit off-center. But it is yours. And the room bursts into applause. The child with the bonnet sneezes. Again. Grandmother Margot mutters, "Finally," and goes back to knitting. You step outside to a blur of cheering, dancing, petals, and someone throwing bread for reasons unclear. You dance. You eat. You drink something that tastes like apples and bravery. Your companion, your spouse, steals your pie. You let them. You dance again, badly. You trip again. This time you both go down in the mud, and neither of you gets up for a while, too busy laughing to care. And somewhere in all of it, in the noise, the chaos, the joy, you realize this is the future. Not castles, not crowns, not perfect endings. Just 2 people, choosing each other, every single day. You think of where you began, the glance across the fairground, the letter smeared with ink, the touch of hands at the market stall. And now here you are. Not perfect, but present. Not destined, but determined. Later that night, after the feast has dwindled and the guests have gone home, you sit together in the little cottage that now belongs to you both. There's a candle burning on the table, a simple one beside the 2 old dove-shaped ones. One still has a chipped beak. The other leans to the side like it's drunk on wax. You keep them anyway. You eat leftover pie with your fingers. You talk about nothing and everything. You promise, softly, to figure it all out as you go, and as the fire burns low and the stars blink awake, you fall asleep with their head on your shoulder, their ribbon in your hand, and a quiet peace humming in your chest. Because in a world full of rules and risks, you found the only thing that mattered, someone who chose you back. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let the story settle inside you like warm bread. The feast is done. The song has ended. The lovers, far safe, and you? You can rest now. End of script. Sweet dreams.